Do you feel sometimes this quiet weight coming from the routines you've built for stability? And does your life sometimes feel more like enduring something rather than living? Nothing dramatic, just a steady sense that something deeper is calling? That is your signal to start seeing midlife not as a start of a decline, but as an opportunity to initiate real growth. And in this video, we will explore why the beginning of the second half of your life is perfect to initiate real transformation, and why Nietzsche frames this so-called midlife crisis as a call for authenticity and to break the masks we created for the sake of conformity. If this sounds familiar to you, let me tell you, you're not alone. Many people in their 40s and 50s, they feel this subtle disconnect. So where is this coming from? When building our careers and lives, we focused a lot on stability. We have invested years in building secure foundations, like our families and our jobs. But sometimes there's this quiet sense that our routines are more about enduring than true fulfillment. Despite all these achievements, there's an underlying question of deeper meaning. So let's have a look on this phenomenon that society calls midlife crisis. This label often carries negative connotations of instability or even regret. And in our society and especially in media, this episode in life is often portrayed as a decline. It suggests a loss of vitality rather than a transition into something new. But actually, it's a gentle prompt towards more authenticity, to align more closely with your true self. Now let's take the opportunity to see our lives as a series of transformations. And let's take a moment and see it through Nietzsche's lens and use his famous metaphor of the three Metamorphoses. This concept that he introduced in his famous work, Thus Spake Zarathustra, offers a powerful way to understand personal evolution. So what Nietzsche is saying that each mind needs to go through the three metamorphoses. The first one is the one of becoming the camel. So why the camel? The camel is bearing the heavy loads. It can carry a lot, it can walk miles and miles. And this is actually representing the phase where we are carrying responsibilities and where we're building strengths in early life. But it's also a phase where we're not really questioning the status quo. We want to grow and we take the conditions for granted. And if we want to draw the parallel here, this is a phase in our early careers, right? Where we partly give up our own passions for the sake of conformity and for the sake of security. The second metamorphosis is from the camel to becoming the lion. Now the lion is a wild animal. He's roaring, he's rebelling. And he symbolizes the fight against external norms to assert your own personal will. So the lion calls for freedom. And the lion sounds actually desirable for many of us, right? It sounds good to be the wild and the rebellious and the free lion, the king of the animals. But Nietzsche introduces a third metamorphosis, the one from the lion to the child. Because he says, yes, the lion is free, but he's missing this urge and this sense of creation. Because Nietzsche is saying, to become really fulfilled, we not only need to be free, we also have to use this freedom to create something, to create value, to create something that overlasts us. And that's what the child is doing. The child is embodying innocence and creativity, and also a complete renewal after breaking free. And now you and I are sitting here. We're both in our midlives, and you're eventually wondering in which phase you are right now. And I would say it's actually not that important where you're standing right now, but it's important that you're ready and that you're willing to go into these transformations. And that you start to question the norms and the status quo, and to transform the loads from a camel into something affirming, into something creating. And that's very contrary to what society tells us, because society sees midlife as a time to slow down. We collected some savings, we have a safe job, our families are more or less in a stable state, and the expectation is to maintain this status without taking too much risk. To continue to keep producing and to contribute, but in familiar ways, like in your career or in your family role. Society doesn't like disruption, because that might upset established patterns. And that's why it becomes a midlife crisis, right? Because you can choose now. You can decide to not question the path and to accept what is expected from you and just to go on. But this is usually against your inner will. It clashes with your inner pull towards something more real. And this mismatch between the external expectation and between your personal desires is what what causes this midlife crisis. Now, many of us stay on track because they value conformity higher than authenticity. But this is what Nietzsche critiques as herd mentality. That's what the sheep are doing. You're standing with the herd, and you're eating grass all day, and you lead a somewhat happy life. If you want to get out of that, you need to listen to your soul's call for self-overcoming. It's a call for growth and leave behind what does no longer serve you. You can feel it. I know it. I was there also. You feel it usually in these empty routine moments. And when you're doing your daily tasks that suddenly feel hollow, despite having success. And that's not a decline. It's a sign that you're ready for the next stage. I started reading Nietzsche when I was in my early 20s. But I must admit, at this time, I didn't really understand his concepts fully. In the beginning, it can be a bit complicated or even overwhelming. But when I entered my midlife, his writings provided much more clarity, especially in my own reflections. And I understood that I have to lean into discomfort and turn it into an opportunity for transformation. Now, Nietzsche doesn't explicitly talk about a midlife crisis, but he's talking about different phases in life. In his book, Human, All Too Human, he describes that in the early phases of our life, we start to build masks for survival. And this is also important because these protective layers help us to navigate through the challenges of society, of life, of our careers. That's a concept that actually also Carl Jung takes up in his process of individuation. Carl Jung says in the early life, we start to separate our ego, our persona, from our true self. And it starts with a phase of inflation of our ego and alienation from the two. And later in life, the task is to integrate them again. And this is the process of individuation. So when we mature, when we grow older, when we make all this experience in our jobs, in our lives, when we take over responsibilities, and when we make our mistakes, we start to understand also that not everything we build up, not all the masks we're wearing are serving us. And I felt this very clearly in the late stages of my corporate career, because there I felt this call for true expression of what I really want to do. It was getting louder and louder, and I became more and more unsatisfied with the job that I'm doing. I started also to question the goals that I give to myself. And this turned my restlessness into a purposeful signal. And I understood one important truth. And that is that I won't find the fulfillment somewhere out there, somewhere in my job or in my family or in any of the other roles that I'm playing. I need to go into myself and I need to overcome myself. For true fulfillment, I need to strive for deeper self-understanding. And that I have to stop avoiding myself, but that I have to embrace things that are uncomfortable or that are unpleasant to me, because this is required for real growth. So why is midlife such a great opportunity to go into this transformation and to become the child? Because as a camel, we collected a lot of wisdom and experience, and that actually makes the lion's rebellion smarter. The knowledge tempers the fight with strategy. And this is what Nietzsche calls the tested knowledge in his book, The Will to Power. The experience owns our instincts and choices. We learned a lot by trial and error. And by that, we're making our choices and our decisions better. And that's actually an important thing because for example, I don't regret my first part of the career. Because I think the experiences I made there, they built resilience. And I needed to have this knowledge and this experience to get where I am today. You cannot skip this first step. Even if we change completely the way of our lives, it doesn't mean that the first part was wrong because it led to the point where you're standing today. And from there you can continue. It's completely okay to make mistakes and to collect also skills from different domains because this enhances also philosophical exploration. When we are young, we're making our decisions more impulsive. In our midlives, we can do this much more informed and therefore with higher precision. In midlife, we also start to understand the urgency to that because our time is limited. And that sharpens our focus, not to waste too much time anymore. And I don't mean to get in panic here, but you need to push to live more intentionally, to prioritize what matters most to you. So for me in my 40s, for example, that meant also to go more on a spiritual journey. And that's something that's at least not obvious for an engineer. I was always interested in personal development and I did a lot of coachings and mentorings and took courses about how to improve and optimize my life. But in retrospect, I must say, most of the things I learned are just like life hacks, or they're just like superficial fixes. The real change started like 10 years ago when I really started to work on myself and on inner work. And this is also a process, and one needs to evaluate different methods and what works for one personally. So I started with meditation and journaling, and later I added also dream work and active imagination to that. By that you start to build a connection with your unconsciousness. And if you start to understand yourself better, also your choices become more meaningful. Another great advantage in our midlife is that we also have a low tolerance for nonsense, right? We understand what works and what doesn't work, and we also understand the people that want to sell us bullshit. Because we made the experience already. We recognize this pattern that don't really serve us. And this is a true gift. You want to make a test? So just ask yourself, what once seemed essential that now feels superficial? And take some minutes to really think about it and also write it down. Because this question can really spark personal insight. So usually when we are in our midlives, it also means we have less to lose. Because we build already the foundations and the risks feel more manageable. We have a certain degree of stability in our lives, like financial savings or also our personal networks. And they act like safety nets. If we make changes, it feels feasible. That means a transformation becomes much more practical rather than overwhelming. So we have this opportunity to clear space for creation and to make room for bold, self-directed endeavors. And an even bigger opportunity you have if you're facing right now something like family shifts or also career plateaus, because these can really open the door for exploration and can also make the need for transformation much more urgent. So don't see this as a crisis, but see it as an opportunity. So in your age, you actually have everything it needs. You still have power and endurance. You have knowledge and experience, and you have the drive for freedom and rebellion of the lion. Only if you don't use this potential, it will lead into a midlife crisis. But if you give up your old parts, if you overcome yourself, this leads to the innocence of the child. And from there you can start your creative, playful renewal. And if you now wonder how you can get started, just do what we discussed. Seek an inner dialogue with yourself. Try to understand yourself better. And the best way to do it is to go into voluntary discomfort. Because from there starts self-overcoming. For me, these are longer fasting periods or endurance events like long bike packings or mountain climbings. For you, it can be something different. Each of my experiences helped me to strip away illusions about myself and about life. And it also peels away false beliefs through introspection. So if you want to grow, you have to go out of your comfort zone. Become an adventurer, and I can promise you will achieve deeper inner harmony through the process of self-overcoming. Because staying in your comfort zone breeds gradual regret. You might not notice it directly, but gradually you will become more and more dissatisfied over time. Growth, on the other hand, is more effort, it's more pain, I admit it, but it yields fulfillment. And this is actually the only path to sovereignty over your own life. So I hope this video helped you to understand that midlife is not a phase of a crisis. Not if you actively design this phase. But it's actually can be the best time of your life and the time for really becoming who you are. Because you can achieve clarity over your career and over your life. And whatever happens, don't judge it. That's what Nietzsche calls Amor fati, the love of fate. You cannot change the circumstances, but you can take active control over your own destiny. For me, that really changed this emptiness, this void that I felt getting bigger and bigger into real and true purpose. And don't worry, you're not too late, because this is also not a one-time event. It's an evolving process, and we are all on our path, and we are all where we're supposed to be. So don't feel any regret about your past life, but imagine how you can create your second half of the life. Now, if this was inspiring and motivating for you, I urge you just to get started with a small step. What can you do today? Consider just one small action to begin this exploration. And if you want to learn more about this life-affirming philosophy and about the process of individuation, subscribe to our channel and watch our other videos. See you next time.